Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. With that said, it's actually a very, very, very busy week in the world of sports, in the world of basketball. There is no more time to waste, so let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, NBA Draft Combine is going on right now, literally actually as we speak, okay? And I know the NBA Draft Combine on the grand scheme of things in the world of sports maybe isn't the biggest storyline going on, but look, as far as the impact that it can have on college basketball next year, this is a huge couple days. You have guys that go in as relative unknowns that get first-round guarantees. You think they're going to be a cornerstone at a major school. Boom, they're gone. That school's scrambling. You have guys that you think for sure are gone. They don't play well. They decide to come back. They turn into All-Americans. So the point that I'm trying to make is that you just never know what's going to end up at the NBA, what's going to end up happening at the NBA Draft Combine. And so I solely bring it up because, this is the time of year where largely rosters are being set for 2025, 2026, and some of the best players in college basketball are making their big decisions. And so what I want to do now is I want to talk about 3-4 of the biggest storylines. And I do want to start with what I believe to be the most impactful piece of news over the last couple days. And it actually came from a player that many of you might not be super familiar with. It is a player named Carter Bryant who played at Arizona this year, okay? So listen, if you just looked at Carter Bryant's stats on a stat sheet, you would sit there and say, okay, Torres, who is this? Why does it matter? Blah, 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 this and that. Well, I bring it up because if you actually watched Arizona, this kid was a bona fide stud, okay? He quote-unquote only averaged 6.5 points per game. But I think part of it was, Tommy Lloyd, and we're going to talk about this, believe me, always kind of favors the veteran players. He tries not to rush freshmen along. But if you watch this kid, 6'8", shoots the crap out of the ball, 37% three-point shooting. I have said many times, I believe I was at UConn when Rudy Gay was at UConn, okay? Now, Rudy Gay might not seem like a big name to you, but I am here to tell you, Rudy Gay was a all-Big East player at UConn, and oh, by the way, played 18 years in the NBA. And Carter Bryant reminds me identical of him, now 20 years ago. And so I just bring it up because to me, Carter Bryant was one of the more fascinating NBA draft stay or go decisions. If he stays, and we're going to discuss it, I think Arizona would have been maybe the number one team in the country, and I think he blossoms into an All-American. If he leaves, it's bad news. Well, we got the news on Wednesday night, that Carter Bryant is officially all in on the 2025 NBA draft. I think he is going to go much higher than a lot of people think. I actually think he's going to end up being a top 10 pick. But I want to discuss what happened at Arizona. And frankly, did Tommy Lloyd, a guy that I have a great deal of respect for, did he misuse Carter Bryant and frankly not use him enough? Okay, so first of all, again, got the itchy nose. I don't know what the hell is going on. I was in the air. I was flying this morning, so maybe I got allergies or something. Anyway, so Carter Bryant, as I said, 6'8" forward, really good. Okay, and so what's interesting to me about him is, like I said, I think he was one of the most underrated players in all of college basketball. I've given you the stats. I've given you the intangibles, but he only played about 18, 19 minutes a game. And this isn't me, by the way, with revisionist history talking about why didn't he play more. There are tweets out there during the season where I said, if I was Tommy Lloyd, I would be playing Carter Bryant literally as many minutes as I possibly could. I think he was that good. I thought he was a little bit misused. And as he has entered the NBA draft, I said, look, he is going to enter the NBA draft. And if he were to come back to Arizona, I said, I believe he will be not only like, let me put it this way. Let me backtrack. Okay. So he enters the NBA draft. I said that night, I said it was bad news. I said, because he played so little, what you want in a perfect world is for him to say, you know what, I'm not ready. I haven't had enough experience, whatever. But the day that he entered the draft, we were live on air. I said, that's bad news for Arizona, because what's going to end up happening is he's going to be wooed by these NBA teams. He's going to get away from campus. He's going to this, he's going to that, he's going to whatever. And what's going to end up happening with Carter Bryant is NBA teams are going to realize how good he is, and he ain't coming back to college basketball. And so if he had come back, I truly believe in my heart of hearts, I think you could have argued Arizona would have been the number one team in the country next year, okay? And we're not going to spend a ton of time on the Arizona depth chart today because we got all offseason to do that. But Jaden Bradley, former McDonald's All-American, third-year player at Arizona, fourth-year player in college basketball. He might be the best point guard in the Big 12. He's going to be right up there with Rob Wright from BYU. Who else? I'm trying to think. Darren Peterson at Kansas, certainly. Jaden Bradley is going to be there. Koa Pete, 5-star McDonald's All-American. Braden Burries, 5-star McDonald's All-American. Toby Awaka, etc. But the one thing that I don't see on that roster is a true superstar, and that's what I believe Carter Bryant would have been. I believe with a year of college basketball under his belt, with a year of understanding the pace and the speed and the whatever, I think we are talking about a guy that could have potentially been Big 12 Player of the Year and on top of it, a first-team All-American. And what I was thinking about today, sometimes you have All-Americans that are just really good college players. You know, Braden Smith was an All-American. Doesn't mean he's going to be a great NBA player. But sometimes you have All-Americans who are basically NBA players playing in college. That's what Cooper Flagg was this year. It's what Paulo Banchero was. It's what John Wall was. That's what I think he could have been next year. And so as I look at the bigger picture of a kid that goes into the draft after averaging 6.5 points per game, but I think he's going to go in the top 10. I think every mock I've seen has him about top 15. And to me, I think there is a fair question of, did Tommy Lloyd essentially waste a season of Carter Bryant playing at Arizona this year? Now, I think there's two separate conversations, to be fair to Tommy Lloyd, because I have heard two different things from Arizona fans. One, I've heard this notion of Tommy Lloyd should have tried to convince him to come back. I don't agree with that. But do I think Tommy Lloyd could have gotten more tread on those tires when he was in Tucson? I absolutely do. But I do think there is, in fairness to Tommy Lloyd, a difference between the two. Now, let me put it this way. I don't think any coach should ever be trying to convince a player to come back that has legitimate top 5, maybe not top 5, but top 10, top 15 potential, okay? Now, if the player wants to come back, if the player doesn't want to test the NBA draft waters, then that's fine. I'll give you an example. I don't want to spoil too much of what's coming these next few weeks, but Richie Saunders at BYU. I talked to Kevin Young about him, the BYU head coach. And Kevin Young said, listen, we know what Richie's potential was as an NBA player, and I never once told him, what he should do. I just said, hey, if you come back, this is what it's going to look like with AJ DeBonsa, with all the guys that we've signed. But if you decide to go pro, this is what I've heard from my contacts across the NBA. And so to me, that's what a coach should do. A coach should not be trying to convince a player to come back. Whenever you're trying to convince somebody of doing something that they're already 50-50 on, generally doesn't work out very well, right? Could make a bunch of analogies about bad first dates that you didn't really want to go on, but somebody convinced you to go on. And then next thing you know, it's Applebee's and you got a bill and you're like, why am I even here? Why am I at Applebee's right now? I wouldn't say that's the exact Carter Bryant situation, but it's kind of what I'm saying. And so I don't believe Tommy Lloyd should have convinced him to try and come back. Lay out the options, do whatever, and let him decide for himself. He's an 18-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid. He's going to be in a grown man's league. If he thinks he's ready, then that's his prerogative. By the way, I think it goes without saying, would be really bad for recruiting if it comes out that you're trying to convince kids that could be first-round picks to return to college basketball for selfish reasons. Probably not going to help your cause. At the same time, though, let me say this. Do I think that Tommy Lloyd could have gotten more out of Carter Bryant while he was on campus? I do. And, I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. I do think it's a little bit of a cautionary tale for players who want to go to Arizona. It's not a knock on Tommy Lloyd. I love that staff. That staff is awesome. And they just landed 2 McDonald's All-Americans, so they're recruiting fine. But at the same time, I always say this. I say, really, in my opinion, there's 2 types of coaches in college basketball. There are the ones that are always going to trust the veterans, rely on the veterans, and basically say, listen, if you're a freshman and you're not ready and you're going to hurt us and you're going to make mistakes, we're not playing you. Bill Self is famous for that. Bill Self would rather play a 5th-year senior that he totally believes in than the 5-star McDonald's All-American. Go back through Bill Self's career. He's never been good with 5-star kids straight out of high school because he just doesn't trust them. Roy Williams was that way. Jay Wright was. I remember getting in a fight with Villanova fans because I was like, if my son was a one and done, I would not send him to Villanova. Then there's the other kind of coach. John Shire, Coach K previously, John Calipari. Listen, you can criticize John Calipari for whatever, but when John Calipari has a 5-star kid and knows I am only getting a year out of this kid, Calipari throws him into the fire, lets him play through his mistakes, and Calipari's stance, and we can argue how successful it's been the last couple years, is basically his stance is, look, I don't care if you make mistakes in November and December if that's going to get you ready for March when I need you the most. I can go through a million examples, but the one that sticks out to me, I remember early in Tyler Hero's freshman year at Kentucky. Tyler Hero was struggling to shoot the ball. Now, he was still, even when he was struggling, he was getting 12, 13, 14 points a night, but it might be on 3 of 9 3-point shooting, 2 of 7 3-point shooting, whatever. And so at the time, people were like, you can't play this kid. He's not shooting the ball well. And Calipari just kept throwing him out there, kept throwing him out there, kept throwing him out there. Next thing you know, he's one of the best players in college basketball come mid-February into March. Successful season. He goes on to be a lottery pick. And so Tommy Lloyd, he comes from that Mark Few tree where, they'll play freshmen if they're one of the best players, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Suggs at Gonzaga. But the counter to that is that if you're not 100% ready, they're not going to throw you into the fire. And I think it cost Arizona this year. Listen, again, this isn't an Arizona depth chart conversation, but, listen, I hate picking on kids, but Arizona fans that are watching this know the facts. There was a veteran player on that roster that got a lot of minutes solely because he was a veteran, and he really struggled, and he never really figured it out. And I just wonder, if you threw Carter Bryant into the fire earlier, is that a dude that by the time you get to March, all of a sudden is playing at an elite level and showing more of the potential that we saw throughout the season, right? Because you look at Arizona, listen, they played everybody tough. I mean, they played Houston tougher than everybody. They played Duke tougher than Alabama did in that East Regional. But could they have used one more guy? Could they have used a star? And by the way, could they have used a star that they were probably going to lose? Yeah, I think they could. So does it change their season? I don't know. I don't know if Carter Bryant was even at the peak of his powers if they could have beaten Duke in that East Regional. But I just look back, and I do think this is going to be a season that Arizona fans look back on and say, damn, we had that dude. And by the way, people, I haven't even looked at the chat, but I guarantee people are saying, oh, Torres, he averaged 6 points. He's not good. Just telling you, right now, it's May 15th. NBA draft is super late this year. I think it's like May 27th or something, 28th. I only bring it up because let's go back and look. I think this kid ends up going top 10, but I think it was a largely wasted season by Arizona, and it stinks because this kid was so special. And we could all see it. We could all see it. You knew you were going to lose him. You knew if he entered the NBA draft, he wasn't coming back. Well, that's exactly what happened. Arizona, by the way, to its credit, listen, they're going to have a contingency plan. I think they'll probably go European. They'll try to find probably an older player, 20, 21 years old, to replace Carter Bryant at that 3. And I still think they're good. Jaden Bradley, again, Koa Pete, Braden Burries. But I think he was the piece that would have put them over the top. He was the piece. I would have had them minimum top 3, maybe number 1 in the country. Unfortunately, we'll never know.